So hello coders. Today I'm back on my channel with a new video on Spring RestClient. So this has been introduced very recently, and this is actually a tool inside the Spring ecosystem which helps us provide the facility to do API requests or API calls from one microservice to another. So these are just similar to REST template, or we have also used maybe Fin clients in our projects, where if we had to do say inter microservice micro communication, inter-service communication, or an intra-service communication within a communication within the same service setups. Okay, so call one service one, call service two. So in that case, we were basically using REST template, or we would be using Fin clients. But this has been introduced very recently. It's a very popularly tool which has been the usage has been increasing very recently. I mean, it's very fast. So I thought to make a video on this because it has a lot of advantages, which we will be exploring in this video further down. Because these API calls, which we do from one service to another, whether let it be internal calls or whether it be external calls, these are very common in a developer's life, and we have to do it, I think, almost every day. So we are writing the code for it. So this is a very advanced tool, which is actually basically intended to replace Rain clients, because Rain clients is a third-party dependency, and this one has been provided by Spring itself. One catch about this is like this is only available in Spring Boot versions 4.0.1 and above, so it is not available in 3 series, 3.x.x series, so we can't use it there. So and to talk about the usages, so where they can be used, so they can be used in inter-microservices communications, or they can also be used in aggregation layer. So say we have an API gateway, and these API gateways have to call different services. So we can also use it there. We can also use it for the external APIs, or say asynchronous workflows, or say the Saga orchestration pattern, wherein one service calls the other service based on some events or triggers. So in those cases also we can use it. So this is a very important topic, and I would in this video I would be basically giving you a brief idea about how it can be used, and mostly I will be talking about the implementation layer in the code, so that whenever you face this challenge to implement this either in your personal project or maybe in your enterprise applications, uh, it should be not difficult for you to implement following these steps, and it should be you should get up started very quickly, because I have spent hours understanding its configuration, and I'm making the video only to give you the only the required part. So if you do these 4 to 5 steps, you should be up and running. Your REST client should be up and running, and it should take a very less time. I think maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and your REST client would be integrated in your current project. So let's jump into this, and let's understand how this REST client works. I shall also be giving the link of this code in because this is hosted in the GitHub repository. So I shall also be giving this link in the description. So you can always refer that. And to get started, you can always clone those or maybe fork that repository and get started with a basic hands-on. And then you can try implementing it in your custom projects, which could be more complex, fairly more complex than what I have built today. Okay.
Okay, so looking at the REST template driven architecture pattern, wherein we are using REST template to make API calls between different microservices to get or update data between those services. We this would be a basically a rough architecture diagram wherein we're just showing the flow of how the services would actually interact with each other. So say this is a front end client. This is can be anything. It can be a web or it can be a mobile device. So web in the sense like it can be a browser. And we assume whatever it is, we just call it a front end client. So this front end client is basically passing a request to this payment service. There could be a load balancer API gateway before this, and obviously in large applications or in enterprise applications, we would be finding it. But I'm just assuming for the sake of simplicity right now, like this request directly comes to the payment service. This payment service starts processing something on its end, and this payment service also needs to call internally order service and also user service. Maybe it needs some data from it to process further. So say there are a trigger of events happening. Say at one line it says like, okay, this parameters have been fulfilled. Now I need to make a call to order service. Fine. So how does it do that? So it uses REST template. So via REST template, it firstly makes a calls to order service. It gets the response. Again, it starts processing, and again it encounters an event happens. So these are like, I'm not going into details, but it's like you can always refer to the Saga orchestration pattern, say where events are happening and the services have to call other services to get some data. Okay, so once the order service also gives back the data, again processing happens, and again the payment service needs to call the user service, and it does so. And again, via REST template, it is doing so, and again it is getting the response. So what is happening inside this application right now? So if we go and see the code actually, so it would be like in particular service layer, in a particular method there would be a call, REST template call being made for auto service. In a different maybe service layer, in a different what say a different method, there would be a different REST template call again happening for user service. So what do we see? There is code duplication. It is the same thing. We are just doing the same thing. Okay, what is changing in between auto service and user service? Maybe the URL is changing, maybe the port is changing only, or and with a few query params, sometimes even not that. So just that the port changes and say the API is changing. Okay, and the same boilerplate code being used for this, and again the same boilerplate code being used for auto service and then for user service and for whatnot. If there are 10 services I need to call, so the code is scattered, it is redundant, and it is something wherein if you find go and try to read the code, you will see like, oh, it is one piece or is there, one piece is there, and it's very difficult to find. It might get difficult to debug also at later stages. So what to do? So this is not a clean architecture. This is not supposed to be something which we actually wish for when we are moving towards software development excellence.
So to overcome this problem, which we have, Spring has introduced REST client in Spring Boot version 4.0 and above, wherein what it does is like it is basically an upgradation of what REST template was. So we shall be looking on a higher level diagrammatic approach of what it does and how it is built, and we shall also dive into the code level perspective. So as to how to implement it in our project. Okay, so moving below, this is our solution to our REST template issue. So if we are using a REST client, everything remains the same. We have again the front end client hitting payment service, order service, user service, everything is fine. Just that what becomes different over here is like now this payment service is a bit expanded and it has one separate section within itself which is called an HTTP client. So this is what we would be adding in this approach, HTTP client. Now, this HTTP client can have data in the sense like configurations for all the services which we want to hit. So, say we want to hit order service. So, we will have an order service client. Say we want to have a user service. So, we will have a user service client. Similarly, say we had an inventory service, say suppose. So, we will have an inventory service client also. So, we can always customize it based on how we want it. Okay. And once we have added all those separate service clients inside the payment service, so these clients, they will be responsible for hitting those APIs which we were previously hitting via order service. So all those configurations and all those details of what APIs you have to hit at what port numbers you have to hit will be provided inside this client. So this is an idea. So what is the advantage? So previously our code was cluttered, it was scattered, and it was difficult to find and trace it. Now it is like everything is inside this client package. So whether you are hitting n number of services, but you always know you just have to go to your client package and you will find all the APIs being listed over there or all the REST API calls being configured over there. Plus, this is a more clean architecture. This is a new way which Spring Boot is pushing now. So this would be the future, and it would some or the other day be replacing REST templates. So it's better to adopt it early than to be late. So saying all this, now let us deep dive into the code and let us see how we can implement this in our Spring Boot projects. So I have already built one project which is ready with all the code so that I'm not wasting time writing the code, but rather I am investing time explaining how what the code does, and we shall see a demonstration of it also. So, okay, let us jump into the code saying that. Okay, so coming to the code part. So this is a web application. It's a REST web application which I have currently built. So this is the one service which we would assume we would be hitting. So we can assume this as to be the user service compared to the diagram we were having previously. Okay, so and we would also be creating a payment service from where we would be hitting those APIs. Okay, so this is a simple Spring Boot application. We're having REST endpoints and which are working perfectly fine. So this is one of them. So let me show you the code. So this was a boilerplate I just downloaded firstly from Spring Initializer IO. And my application.yml has nothing, just that I'm starting this application on port 8081, changing it from default 8080. And if you see my form, yeah. So this form, I have built it on currently on 4.0.1. Doesn't matter. This is a normal web application, so it can still be on 3.3.5 if you want, but just that it has to be running and stable. And if you go to the dependencies, I have starter web, and I just took an actuator, nothing else. So it's a plain simple REST web application. On the controller, if you see, I basically have set up two endpoints, which is is the user data and the other is a user record. So the user data basically will be returning only a string value to us. Uh, there's a user data from get user data method, and the user record, this API, basically I have created this intentionally. I'm not creating a DB and then getting those from the DAO layer and then sending the data back to the service calling it or the client calling it. What I've done is like I have temporarily created data inside this application. So this is a user record, which is a DTO. Okay. So if you see, this falls also under the DTO package. Okay. So this DTO will be having few fields onto it like ID, name, age, email. I have a parameterized constructor, getters and setters, nothing else. And once this is all done, basically this user service method, I mean the controller comes here, it calls the user service and goes to this method, which is get user record, which is in the user service. So what this method does is it basically initializes one value and pushes some data into it, and that is again returned back to the controller layer, and the controller layer again returns it back to the client or the service whosoever was calling this. So we would be getting that particular JSON object from it. Okay. So that is it from this application. A very simple plain application. Uh, and let's run this and see if it works exactly fine. So these APIs are returning fine. So let this starting up. So the application has started now. So let us go to Postman and see if these APIs are working fine. So one of the API is user data. So let me go to Postman. It's on 8081. I say user data. Okay, so it is returning me the same string which we already had. So user data from get user data method. Okay, and if I hit this second API, so which is user record, it also gives me the same thing, Anthony Gonsalves, username, and anthony@gmail.com. So this application is working fine. We have no issues with this. So now let's switch on to the other application, which is the payment service, which we have to build. So let's go to that application. So this is the REST client project, which is basically imitating the payment service. So if you see this project, again, this I have downloaded this from spring.initializer.io. Just fill in basic details over there like artifacts and other folder stuff and what is the description of your project. And I had taken this on the latest available version of Spring on 4. So the minimum version I had 4.0.5 for this. You definitely need at least 4.0.1. It cannot work before below this. So if you see the dependencies which I have added are only two, which is the Spring Boot Starter REST client. This is the one which we would be using for creating this HTTP client. And the other one is the basic WebMVC one, the basic starter just to create REST APIs, which we have in every REST Spring Boot application. So that is it on the POM. And for application YML, it is very basic, starting it on the port default port 8080, nothing there. Uh, Coming to where the logic of this HTTP client will be placed is on this client package. So if you see, there is a client package which has been created, and in this is inside the main Java Spring Boot project. So inside this, we have this user client. Okay, so what is this user client? Basically, it is so like we had discussed before, like for HTTP clients, the number of services we want to hit, say we want to hit auto service, we want to hit user service, so we have to create clients for them. We can always create multiple clients for multiple services which we want to hit. So similarly, I just want to create the user service. I want to hit the user service. So I am creating the user client. Now, what is important is we have to put an annotation of dot at the rate HTTP exchange, and we have to provide the API, the base API, where this service is hosted at, or where we have to hit this. So if you see in my previous application, if you can see in the Postman, so this one localhost slash 8080 8081 slash API, this one was common for all because I have a request mapping of slash API. The user record, the user data keeps on changing, right? So similarly, what I am doing is I am passing in for an HTTP exchange of localhost 8081 slash API. I now what we need to do is like one thing we need to pay attention is like this is not a class, this is an interface. Okay. So there we don't have to implement those methods, we just have to declare or define those methods, and the Spring Boot will automatically do the implementations of these. We don't have to do it. Okay. So, but what we have to do is like those methods, those APIs which we want to hit in the other service, say in the user service. So, user service has two APIs, user data and it has user record. So, we have to declare those in this file, whatever APIs we want to hit, and there would be a method associated to it. Say this is a get user record, this is a get user data, just to match what it is doing, just to make sense for that we have to put an annotation of get exchange for this. We don't have to put at the rate get mapping, but at the rate get exchange. So, and this one is basically now creating a user client exchange. Okay, it's an interface which the implementation would automatically be created by Spring Boot, and we have already defined the APIs which we want to hit from this application, the payment service. One more thing which we have to do is like we can have n number of things, so user client, order client, inventory client, anything. What we also need is this HTTP client config. Okay, so this is the config file wherein we basically say like scan all those files or scan all those interfaces which have this annotation of at the rate HTTP exchange. So when we put this at the rate import HTTP services, and we also give it a base package. So I have already told it like you scan this package or folder, and you have to scan all those files which are having this annotation at the rate HTTP exchange and create beans for this. So this is also a configuration class. So a beans would also be created for this. but it will be creating beans from those interfaces, implement those methods. So everything is happening in the background. Just look at the structure how Spring Boot is doing. It is basically creating implementation for us. We don't have to do it. It is creating beans for us, and it will be injecting those beans whenever we require them. That is the beauty of Spring Boot when we are using it. So we just have to provide the base package, and I also need to provide the type. So I can always provide multiple. So it can be comma separated. So I could say like, oh, it's order client dot class if I had one. But since I don't have one, so I'm avoiding it. But yeah, if I had one, I can always do comma separated and I can pass into it, and all those beans would be created. Now, how do we use it? So that's all. That's all the configuration which we needed to do. Now comes the usage part. So, see, ideally, the usage would be the best part is to do it in the service layer. Everywhere we go, like in the payment controller, so any request comes in, a user is hitting this from the browser for the payment controller, and the payment controller internally needs to fetch some data from the user service. So, ideally, that call should go from the service layer. I, for demonstration purposes, or this is a just a dummy project which we are creating to understand what it is. So, just for understanding purposes, I have not created the service layer. I'm hitting it from the controller layer. Okay. So what I'm doing is like we basically just need to have this user client. Okay, just create object of this user client which we have created. I mean, just we take a reference, and inside this we are also having this constructor, parameterized constructor, wherein this would be initialized and the value would be assigned. Now, say we are allowing exposing some APIs from this payment service. So I'm saying like these could be different APIs. Okay, these need not be the same API. So it is not like user data. We have to put like slash user data. No. So you can see like I have put slash get hyphen user data. It can be anything. It can be slash hyphen get hyphen Anthony. Anything. Whatever you want to name it, and you decide it as per your application's nomenclature, but it doesn't need to be the same. So this is like get user data. So I'm exposing this API. So say a user is calling this API, this method would be invoked. So what it does is like I'm saying when this method is getting invoked and I need to get the data from the user service. So what I need to do is like the user client dot get user data. So how do I get this method? So if you see the user client will already have this method. So I will say get user data. Now anytime it happens, so it will go inside this, it will hit this method, it will call this API, and it will get the data from there, and it will return the data again to the client. Same thing with the get user record, same thing. uh, so that is it. So just that we have done it on the controller layer, but please make sure to do it usually in your service layers. Controller layers, it's not advisable to do it. So that is it. That is how easy we are basically hitting this API in other services. So the inter-microservice communication has become so easy now. Okay, so let's run this application once and see how does it work and how easy it is to get this data. So I start this application, and once it starts, we would be hitting these APIs which it has been exposed, which we have actually exposed. Okay, so it has started. Now let us go to Postman and start hitting these APIs and see what do we get. Okay, so this is at localhost 8080 oh, 8080 API slash get user data, right? Okay, so why are we hitting like this slash API slash get user data? So is it because the user service had slash API? No, because we also have put slash API. We are also exposing our APIs as slash API slash get user data. So that is why we are also writing it like that. Now let's hit this. We should be getting the data which is the user service is actually returning. Similar data we should be getting, right? Okay. Yes, we have got it. So user data from get user data method. So it's the same string which the user service was returning. let us also hit the other API, which is get user record. Okay. So if I make it slash get user record, okay, Anthony Gonsalves and Anthony at gmail.com, everything is the same. So this shows like how the flow is happening. The flow is simple of what we had discussed. So if we look at our diagram, so it is coming from the front end client to the payment service assigns that responsibility to the HTTP client. HTTP client is hitting the user service through the REST client, and this is again bringing back the response, and it payment service again has the response, and it sends the response back to the front end client, where it has got the data from the user service, it has manipulated on the data itself, so it has appended both the datas and any permutation combination and anything it wants to do with these datas, it can do and again send it back to the client. So this is how a REST client basically works. It's very similar to the Feign clients, which we would be using earlier, and it's still there. So the advantage of using this REST client is like over using this Feign client is that Feign client was a third-party service. So whenever we're using it, it's like a third-party dependency we are adding. But this one is basically in the Spring ecosystem. So if we want to keep everything inside Spring and use all the features and tools and libraries of Spring, then we can go for REST client. So it is basically an alternative to Fin client. It is uh, just being proposed as that. So that is what it is new. So we can use it. Let me know how do you like it. So, because I have been starting using it very recently, I've just used it in one of my recent projects. So, I am also pretty new to this. So, let me know in the comments how do you feel about using it. Also, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and please hit the like button and comment on this video to let me know any feedbacks if you have. That will help me motivate making more videos for this. I will keep bringing more related and similar videos on this topics of APIs, microservices, and system designs. So I will try making those videos and put those videos on my channel. My videos, if you see, it would be more focused on how do you tackle these problems on a day-to-day life, because this is what I'm posting. This is something you can relate it very closely to how you're working. Because when you work, you need to get these things sorted. If these configurations or if these dependencies are not properly configured, it will not work. So I mostly try to make those practical videos which we would be facing issues where we in our day-to-day life of software development. So yeah, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon for staying tuned to more videos. Thank you.